Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, July 6th, 2024, and today we are going to be taking a look at the 538 2024 presidential election forecast. Now, around a month ago, I made a video talking about the brand new forecast that was released by 538. It was really exciting because we had yet to see a major political model released of the 2024 election up until 538. We had gotten quite a few, but 538 is often regarded as one of the most accurate and well-known election forecasts across the country. And so when they released their model here, it released some very interesting numbers that were in contrast with what we had been seeing on the national level in some of the head-to-head polls between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Now, this time around, we are looking at it after the debate, a week and a half after, when we're looking at a huge new number of polls at the national level. Polls that now show President Trump with a larger lead over President Biden, the largest lead we have seen in quite some time. And so, with all of that taken into account, the 538 forecast needs to be updated. And so we're going to do that today on an electoral map. We're going to take a look at what the overall outcome would be in a 270 to win type of scenario, because right now, according to the forecast, Donald Trump wins 51 times out of 100 in the simulations that they run, and Joe Biden wins 49 out of 100. And so it really is a toss-up race at this point. That also stands in direct contrast with a lot of what we seem to see on the national news media when it comes down to national polls. Right now, Donald Trump maintains a 3.3% advantage on the national level, larger than some battleground states. For instance, Michigan, which has Trump up just by 0.6, Wisconsin, which has Trump up by just 1.5. Seemingly, the generic ballot or the national numbers between Trump and Biden seem to show a better result for Republicans than some battleground states, which is why this 538 forecast is so uniquely interesting. Because while the popular vote is often a good indicator of how each political party will end up doing, this election seems to be entirely different. In no election in the 21st century has the Republican Party done better on the national popular vote than they did in the battleground states that they needed to win. Meaning that we have never seen Republicans do worse in swing states than on the national level. Because Republicans have not won the national popular vote in the 21st century since 2004. And so it's happened only once. George W. Bush was elected without it in 2000. Donald Trump was elected without it in 2016. And so now we are being told that Trump is up by 3.3%. So 538 certainly has a different way of looking at it. They take into account polling factors, economic factors, demographic data, non-polling fundamentals, as they refer to it. You're looking anywhere from unemployment to taking a look at previous election performance, things that aren't directly impacted by what the national polls are saying, by what the national news media is saying. And so all of those things are extremely important in understanding an election forecast like this one. So Trump at 51, Biden at 49, a very, very close election. Let's get into the map. To give you a baseline, this is what they use. Now, I use 4 different rating systems: solid or safe, likely, lean, tilt, and then of course there's toss-up, but I never end an electoral map by not characterizing every state. I characterize every single one. And so while they do have their own characterizations of rating here, I don't entirely agree with the way they do them. Their idea of a solid Republican state and what I would refer to as safe is something that has a 98% chance of victory or higher. In reality, a state like Montana should not be in the likely Republican column. In reality, a state like South Carolina should not be in the likely Republican column. And so I'm going to adjust it a little bit. To put it plainly, we're going to start anywhere from 90 to 100% being safe Republican, anywhere 75 to 90% being likely, anywhere lean would be 60 to 75, and then the tilt, which is what we use for slightly in either column. Instead of using toss-up, we're going to throw in tilt there anywhere from 51 to 60%. And so keep that in mind. It'll become more apparent as we get through the video and we talk through it. But yeah, so here we are, electoral map-wise, a very, very close and competitive race. A week ago, Trump was up 277 electoral votes. 2 weeks ago, before the debate, he was down. And so this fluctuation in forecast over the past week and a half pretty much resembles what the national polls have shifted some of these states to be in, and exactly which column they're in, has been pretty much decided over the past week solely and only given the new influx of national polls. And so here we are. 270 needed to win. Let's start off by characterizing some of the easier states. States that just at baseline, based on this percentage forecast here, are not going to be, super powerful, characterizations. Nothing that is shocking anyone, nothing that is throwing us for a loop. So these mean states like New York, where Biden has a 96% chance of victory. Again, never agreed with the characterization that this should not be solid. California, safe blue. Oregon, safe blue. Washington, safe blue. I'm going to characterize this on an electoral map in just a moment. I just want us to go through it. Hawaii, safe blue. I'm going to make sure too, because I don't have all of these percentages memorized. A lot of what I like to do here is live react to some of the numbers that we see here because it gives you a more genuine answer from me. So for example, New Jersey wouldn't be safe blue. Traditionally, I characterize it as safe blue, but it's interesting. We'll talk about that when we get there. Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, certainly not New Hampshire, certainly not Maine. Illinois, safe there for the Democrats. New Mexico, Colorado on the verge, but not there yet. So we pretty much have a general idea of what states are going to be characterized as safe. So Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Delaware, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New York. And that's pretty much it. I believe the first district, though. I believe that first district in Maine should be considered safe. So let's go ahead and do that. There we are. The District of Columbia. That's an easy one. No real shockers here. Nothing that should surprise anyone. The only real differentiation from what, I don't know if he's the right word there, only real difference from my own electoral map is that New Jersey is not safe blue. Let's move on to the Republican states. Idaho, Wyoming, Utah. Utah's interesting. It's obviously safe red, but I think the margin could be very similar to what it was in 2020, which shows huge pushbacks from the Republican Party. I'm making a video on Utah tomorrow, which is why it's at the forefront of my brain right now. North Dakota, South Dakota, safe red. Nebraska, safe red. 3rd District, safe red. 1st District's interesting, safe red. Oklahoma, safe red. Kansas, safe. Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana. I'm annoying you, probably. Sorry, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana. Can you remember 2008? I'm going a bit on a tangent here, but remember 2008, Obama won Indiana. He won it by a point larger than North Carolina. Fascinating election. I'd encourage you to watch the election night coverage because it is insanity to think we have come so far away from where we were just, 3 election cycles ago. Iowa, safe red. That's new. Iowa is now in the safe Republican column. South Carolina. I feel like I'm on CNN here that I'm announcing it. It's getting exciting. South Carolina, safe red. Iowa, safe red. So let's characterize. Whoa, that is not a reveal. That is not the electoral map that you will find at the end. This is my election prediction, my most recent one. I want to use it as a point of comparison by the time we get off of this. So let's go ahead and characterize all the states that are safe red. Pretty much everything we expect. Iowa is a new surprise. I really did not expect it to be in the safe Republican column right now. If anything, likely, but I see it. I do see it, and I think the margin here might account for that later down the line. What's interesting, though, is that Texas is certainly not a safe red state. It's cut off around 78%. I don't think Joe Biden has a 23% chance of victory in Texas right now, but again, I'm not here to argue. Texas is Texas. American politics is weird. Right now, though, Texas, 78% chance for Donald Trump. So here we are. I believe that 2nd district, let me double check. Sorry, we're getting a little bit all over the place. But yeah, this is where we are in terms of electoral map coverage. 131 electoral votes for Donald Trump, 167 for Joe Biden, 240 remaining toss-up electoral votes. Now, some noticeable omissions from the safe Democratic column, New Jersey. Noticeable omissions from the safe Republican column, Texas and Florida. It seems that 538 has a little bit less expectations than what some of the people you might see on Twitter or on other media sources might predict about these states. I do agree with the sentiment. Trump's going to win them. I don't know if I would say that they are safe red, so I do actually agree with 538 in this point. But here we are, 167 to 131. All right, we know this. 270 needed to win. No one right now is getting to 270. 240 toss-up electoral votes. There's a whole lot more ways to go. So let's get through it. Let's start off by characterizing the likely Republican states. We started with the Democrats. Let's build up the Republicans. They're at a deficit right now. Let's not expand that. Ohio, likely red state. Told you that was anywhere between 75 to 90%. South Carolina was already characterized. North Carolina is not there. Georgia's not there. Florida is there. So Florida, Ohio, Texas, not really shocking. Don't really think anyone's too surprised by the characterizations there. Maine 2nd District also joins the crew. Outside of that, I don't think there's really any other states that would join this as a likely Republican state. But these are huge electoral prizes. I mean, don't get this lost on our very swift generalization. Florida is 30 electoral votes. Texas is 40 electoral votes. Ohio is 17 electoral votes. That was a huge swoop. I mean, that was 88 electoral votes in total if you add in Maine 2nd District here. That made up just those 3 states in a district that Donald Trump is pretty, much going to easily win here. So when you wonder, where does Trump's number come from? It comes from a lot of these states that may not be at baseline safe red, but are very strong for the former president. Moving over to President Biden, however, he has his fair share of likely blue states. States like Colorado and New Mexico would be characterized as such. States like Virginia would be. Not Minnesota. Surprisingly enough, not Minnesota. Not New Hampshire. But Maine at large. Actually, no, not Maine. I guess this one must have recently moved down from what my expectation was, but here we are. New Jersey, of course, is likely blue. That was just in the meantime. Nebraska second doesn't join that rank. So here we are, characterizing Colorado, 10 electoral votes, New Mexico 5, Virginia 13, New Jersey 14, and then Maine at large, which is 2. Here we are now to 211 for Joe Biden, still losing to Donald Trump. Donald Trump at 219, 108 toss-up electoral votes left to be characterized. And so I already showed you some of these ratings, and I think, what I really wanted to focus on here is the Rust Belt. Georgia, Arizona, North Carolina, Nevada, Minnesota, and New Hampshire are lean blue states. Believe it or not, these states have really narrowed up since where they were back in 2020, and Joe Biden is in a position where he could very well lose these states. On track to win them, but could very well lose them. That brings him to a number of 226. The bad news for Democrats is that Donald Trump has moved some of these states in the Republican column out of the tilt red column, meaning states like North Carolina are lean red, not tilt. States like Georgia are lean red, not tilt. That's where you have, some problems here for the mainstream Democratic Party in that Donald Trump has taken some Biden states and made them lean Republican states and not the closest characterization possible. So Georgia, North Carolina joined the Trump column, bringing it to a whopping 251 electoral votes. So at baseline, Trump is already outperforming where he was back in 2020, outperforming where Hillary Clinton was in 2016. So it really does come down to these five crucial battleground states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Nevada. To not waste any of your time, let's speed run the Rust Belt and the Sun Belt. Nevada is Trump 57%, Arizona is Trump 59%. Those are tilt red states. On the flip side, Wisconsin is Biden 54, Michigan is Biden 58, Pennsylvania is Biden 52. What does that mean? Well, believe it or not, still a week and a half out from the debate, Biden wins re-election. Now, this map is actually nearly identical to the one that was released around a month ago. And you have to sit here and ask, with all of these new polls that seem like an onslaught against President Biden, how is it that he still comes out ahead? Now, today I made a video talking about the morning consult polls that actually show Biden gaining ground in nearly every battleground state, and on the overall net, his best performance among swing states we have seen this cycle. He's still losing in the morning consult polls here. But 538 takes into account then more than just polling. We remember back in 2022 when even 538 overestimated Republicans, as did the polls, as did the turnout numbers, as did the pundits, as did the media. And yet, Democrats seemingly have learned nothing. I'm not here to throw away any polls. I think they are very valuable in understanding where we are. And I do think they do contribute to a meaningful understanding of where we are nationally. I do think Trump is leading the national popular vote. With that being said, I do think it's possible for Biden to lose the popular vote and win the election. Sounds crazy. Whatever you want to think of me after I say a statement like that one, stick with me for a moment. There is reason to believe, just like we saw in 2022 when Republicans won the national popular vote by 3 points, that a state like Pennsylvania could vote 8 points to the left of the nation. And it won't be 8 points, but it could be 2 or 3. And if Trump is winning nationally by 1 or 2, Biden could be winning Pennsylvania by 1 or 2. That's a weird and a strange reality. I don't think it's this one, but it's certainly possible and certainly something to keep in mind that, hey, something like this is possible. Anyways, focus of this is the 538 forecast here. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, as close as ever. Nevada and Arizona, though, not as favored for Donald Trump as you might think. I do think Georgia is pretty much a lost cause for Democrats. I think there's a circumstance in which they win it back, but it would take extensive outreach to the Black community. It would take extensive turnout amongst the Asian American community, unlike what we saw back in 2020 and even 2021. If you look back at the turnout numbers in 2020 versus 2021 in the runoff election, Asian American turnout actually increased between the presidential and the Senate runoff, which is fascinating. Never, ever, ever happens in American history. Happened in 2020 and 2021. Democrats need that. They need the mobilized base. They need the outraged Democrats. They need the Atlanta metro area. And forgive Georgia Democrats here, but their performance in 2022 was lackluster compared to Katie Hobbs in the governor's race, compared to Mark Kelly in the Senate race. It seems like Arizona and Georgia, while we're at a point of equal convergence, are now starting to move in opposite directions. Arizona, in a way, bluer, and Georgia redder. Regardless, though, 538 says Trump wins both. This election is and will always be a toss-up. No matter what we are told by members of the press, members of the punditry, anonymous members of the Biden administration who are granted an anonymity to speak freely to the New York Times, whoever is saying whatever it might be, this election is always going to be close because that is the nature of American elections, regardless of who you nominate. I mean, Democrats look at this and say, how are we losing to a convicted felon? And Republicans are looking at this and saying, Joe Biden can't serve out 4 terms. How could we potentially lose to Joe Biden? We are such a polarized nation. But it also means our voters are equally polarized too, which means not much shifts them. Not a bad debate, not a good State of the Union. Not much shifts them. And so a map like this one, I think, can just ground us in understanding that this election was always going to be a race that Biden could win, Biden could lose. Trump could win, Trump could lose. It's not going to be like what it was in 2020, or arguably in hindsight, what it was in 2016. This election is narrow, narrow, narrow. And compared to my forecast, I seem to be giving Donald Trump a far higher advantage and chance at victory. I do think Donald Trump wins the election if held today. But 538's forecast isn't gauging the election today. It's gauging an election for November, what they expect to see in November, what the economic indicators say we will see in November. That's why they provide us with what they call a nowcast, meaning if the election was held today, and guess what? That's where Trump actually does better. Because yes, Trump would do better if the election was held today, and that's what this represents. But you start to see some of the areas of weakness for Trump even in a map like this one. Michigan and Pennsylvania are amongst the closest Trump states. So is Wisconsin. Well, those are the first three states to flip on the map compared to 538. Arizona and Nevada, some of the closer states here. Equally, some of the states that are on the closer side on the Trump victory in November, according to 538. And so here we are, 270 to 268. The narrowest election America has seen in over a century, the narrowest election we will likely see for generations to come. It's a very, very close and competitive race. But Biden should not be counted out yet, because it is clear. The forecasts show it, recent polls show it, and also just too, what we know from focus groups after the debate, what we know too about the fact that this is the third iteration of a Donald Trump major candidacy, because he ran in 2000, didn't end up happening, 2016, 2020, now 2024, and the second iteration of this exact presidential election. As much as we lean on history to explain elections to us, that Democrats being down nationally means they're doomed in the presidential only applies in normal elections. And this certainly is not that. The 538 forecast, genuinely, I hope, is able to ground you in understanding that this race has always been down to the wire and will continue to be down to the wire. And even when Trump is up on the overall outcome, on an individual state basis, Biden still very much has a pathway to victory that can be extended beyond 270 or at exactly 270. Trump very easily could win this election, flipping a state like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania based on where the map is right now. But arguably, this goes to show just how close this election will be and why every single moment matters, and why maybe 538 also has a forecast that shows Joe Biden doing better than Vice President Harris. Food for thought. I'm not taking a side on this. I think it really is interesting, though, to see that even when you have models like this one, it is very apparent that the media and some high-level Democrats are taking this and saying the election is 100% thrown out. There would be no fun to this election if it was entirely thrown out. And I can guarantee you, as much as we all like to complain about the mainstream media cycle, everybody's tuned in. Everybody's watching. Everyone's paying attention on political Twitter, on election Twitter. And that's where people feed on this. And do not allow yourself to be caught up in this self-reinforcing cycle of 20-year-old Hill staffers who are going out and saying, word on the street is X. And then you have members from Newsmax saying Biden had a medical emergency on Air Force One. And then you have all these mainstream media pundits going out and writing op-eds saying Biden needs to drop out. There's so much happening, and I think it has become so overwhelming that it has consumed the media cycle and peeled away from the real picture that this election is close, that Biden and Trump are in for the election here through November, here for a very, very close race. Ignore the noise, focus on the numbers, because they show a fascinatingly close election. That's not a word. Very fascinating election, one that we should watch very closely, and one that isn't easily as swayed as we otherwise might think. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.